Hello, I'm Robert J. Sawyer, and this is Supernatural Investigator. This week we ask the question, does reincarnation exist? The idea that our earthly existence doesn't end with the death of our current body is a common belief in many Eastern cultures. But with no concrete proof, many feel that reports of past lives are nothing more than false memories, fantasies, or delusions. Our supernatural investigator is Gezar Mukpo, who some recognize as the reincarnation of an important Tibetan guru. He takes us on a journey to investigate two possible reincarnations in the Western world. Will these stories turn hard skeptics into believers? We put reincarnation to the test on this week's Supernatural Investigator.
If reincarnation is real, it could completely redefine the way that we see our society.
Opinion polls in both the USA and in the UK show that a surprising 25% of the population actually claim to believe in reincarnation.
You know, talk about being a black man in the Civil War, you know, and then go to 5th grade and show your face.
Being Marilyn, I let someone else have it. I'd gladly hand over the baton.
If reincarnation is real, then it is real. You can find the evidence of those previous lifetimes in this lifetime.
In the early 1970s, Tibetan Buddhism had gained a lot of popularity in the West. At that time, Tibetan teachers started coming over to North America. One of these teachers, Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, a Tibetan master, on a trip to Berkeley, California, saw me, and shortly after informed my parents that he believed I was the reincarnation of this Tibetan Lama, Sechen Kongtrul Rinpoche. Rinpoche was a great Buddhist meditation master, and it was within a week that I had this enthronement ceremony. I was 3 years old. And at some point they wanted to take me to the monastery and have me train there and do all of that, but basically my mother and father didn't really want to send me away. So I ended up having a pretty normal Western upbringing. And when I was around 15, I started to investigate my Eastern roots a little more and started to spend time in India and Nepal. And for the rest of my life, I've, been told that I'm this person by someone or another. I'm on a journey to look at some fascinating cases of reincarnation in the West, to determine whether proof of reincarnation exists. I started with Toronto musician Sherrie Laird, the lead singer of the band Pandemonia. Sherrie Lee's vocals are reminiscent of hardcore rockers like Annie Lennox, but Sherrie believes she is the reincarnation of screen icon Marilyn Monroe. For Sherrie, being Marilyn has been far from glamorous. She's experienced disturbing flashbacks and nightmares since childhood.
I sat on my aunt's knee. I was about 12, and she pointed to the beauty mark above my lip, and she said, "Oh, that means you're extra beautiful," or something like that. And I'm like, "Oh, that's I don't want that, right?" I didn't like it. And so she started singing about the Marilyn song, "Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend." Somehow, when she sang that, I sort of became almost embarrassed, like she knew something, like she knew what I was hiding. It was just a very strange feeling, and I described it to my doctor like a chamber, like it was just like wow, wow, like it echoed. I could hear it, and I was like, oh my God, that's my song.
One of the most famous stars in Hollywood history is dead at 36. She seemed to have such a zest for life.
I guess there's fleeting moments where I'm like, I look at Marilyn, I'm like, well, she was very attractive and she was beautiful, but that's so fleeting because I know the demons that came with being Marilyn, and so I don't get to see her as a piece of art. I always experienced the Marilyn that had issues, and always the frights that came with being her. It was never like, oh, look at me, there's flashbulbs going and I'm with the president. It was always like, I can't breathe, I'm choking. It was such a burden, and I just wanted it to go away.
Turns out the ghost of Marilyn Monroe wouldn't be that easy to shake. After suffering for years, Sherrie tried past life regression therapy. This technique uses hypnotic trance to take a person back into past lives.
Because after all,
Sherrie worked with psychiatrist Adrian Finkelstein, a world expert and pioneer in the field.
not wanting to leave and attempt.
Based on Sherrie's case, Dr. Finkelstein wrote the book, Marilyn Monroe Returns, The Healing of a Soul.
She contacted me in October 1998, and she was haunted by flashbacks and nightmares of having lived as Marilyn Monroe and attempted suicide twice prior to calling me. The way she came across was like a troubled psyche seeking relief. She wanted to get rid of Marilyn's demons. Look into my eyes. Your eyes and eyelids are getting tired. Sleep.
He helped me relive the last 20 minutes of my past life's death, and it was exactly what I had been experiencing since I was 5. The chest-crushing feeling, I can't describe it other than it was remorseful and I'd say like perverse even.
Can you tell me what's happening?
Everything is wrong. Just so unhappy.
Through realizing you were Marilyn, you realized you looked like her too. Was there any particular thing that happened? Where
Yeah,
you sort of like...
I was around 18 years old, and I was just checking teeth in the mirror, like doing the whole, you know, the whole thing that she does, and the name shouted out. It just said, you're Marilyn Monroe. You can imagine when I'm like 18 or 20, you know, my facial structure was exactly the same as hers. You know, I'm quite a bit older, so everything's moved and shifted around.
But there was one more twist to the story. Marilyn's mother, Gladys Monroe Baker, died March 11th, 1984. Sherrie's daughter, Kezia, was born exactly 9 months later.
It wasn't until regression when doctor asks you, who else do you recognize around you? And I said Kezia is Gladys.
I laughed at first. I was just like, you know, because I didn't really understand how it worked. I didn't know if that was possible. It would make sense to me.
I'm like, who are you? Why do you act like my mother?
Yeah.
I always said that to her since she was 3 years old.
You know, I approached Sherrie Leigh from a very skeptical point of view at first. And the more time I spent with her, I kept saying to myself, what if this is true? And to tell you the truth, it sort of gave me chills. I wondered just how common belief in reincarnation actually is.
When you look at opinion poll data from both America and from Britain, you find that a staggering 1 in 4 of the population actually claim to believe in reincarnation. In cultures where it's a part of their religion and their religion is very, very important to the people, you can actually find rates of basically 100%. Everybody believes in reincarnation.
I'm not saying or thinking that I'm someone. I'm being told by other people that I'm that person. And it's not just... Carol Bowman is an expert on past life memories in children. Her son, Chase, experienced spontaneous memories of another life.
Chase was a very adventuresome little boy who was, I couldn't keep up with him, and my friends used to tease me about naming him Chase, saying, you know, you should have picked a better name for him. And he was kind of fearless. And when Chase was 5 years old, out of nowhere developed this fear of loud booming sounds. A hypnotherapist friend from Florida was visiting me, and he had quite a bit of experience doing past life regression with adults. I thought he might be able to help Chase with this phobia. And Norman said to him, Chase, close your eyes and tell me what you see when you hear the loud sounds that frighten you. And I had no idea what was about to happen.
I'm a soldier. I'm crouching behind a rock. There's smoke everywhere. I'm confused and afraid. I'm shooting. I don't want to be here. I don't even know who I'm shooting at. All of a sudden, I'm hit.
As he was saying this, I'm thinking, okay, what Sesame Street or Mr. Rogers episode was this? And I really couldn't place it.
They bandaged me up, and they make me go back into battle. I don't want to go. I miss my wife and children.
So at this point, the hair on my arm stood on end. And when you hear your 5-year-old say, I miss my wife and children, it makes you pay attention. Maybe about 6 or 8 months after he had that experience, we were sitting at breakfast, and he was eating a cereal. Out of the blue, he said, "Mom, you remember when I was a soldier?" He said, "Well, I was black."
I wanted to know more about Chase's story. I'm on my way to meet him in New York City, where he works in the film business. When I found out that Chase was a filmmaker, I was really excited. I was going to be meeting someone that had the same interests as me, who probably was sort of into the same things that I was into.
I totally agree. I think
we have these pictures that you drew, that your mom gave us. What do you think looking at them now?
that was a really clear image because that was the moment I was going back into battle, and I was walking up a hill on a path, and a horse and a cannon kind of crossed my path. It was just kind of a real moment of going back to a place I didn't want to go. And this was interesting to the historian that took a look at it. These have actually been things that have helped to validate the story. I described my death as I saw it in that life, as I saw it, which was, okay, I'm here on the ground looking into a battle, and suddenly I'm not, and it was actually, I remember thinking and remarking that it was almost like a jump. It was like, I'm there, and now I'm above, and it was like kind of a rise above, almost like a shot at the end of the movie where, you reveal the setting. I'm less concerned with the story of the Civil War soldier, and more concerned now just with, I guess, how I benefited in having certain questions answered for myself at an early age. And I think if I could say that there was one thing that the experience has carried over into my young adult life, is just kind of that base of, like, I kind of decided early on what happens after you die. I already believe that reincarnation exists, that I have lived before and I will live again. Everyone has, and everyone has done it many times.
What I found really intriguing about Chase's story were a lot of things that are really similar that I've gone through. Very visual, images. When I was a child, I had vivid dreams of walking up a path beside a monastery. Years later, when I visited the monastery of my previous incarnation in Tibet, it was exactly as I had dreamt.
After Chase had his experience, it began in 1988, I started investigating these memories in children and found that a lot of children had spontaneous past life memories. In other words, these memories just come out of the blue in children under the age of 5 without any prompting from an adult. In fact, most of these parents hadn't believed in reincarnation, didn't want to believe in reincarnation because it went counter to their religious beliefs.
Children will sometimes come out with things when they're very small that are actually based on their imaginations, and in the West we might dismiss them as being, say, imaginary friends or whatever it may be. In a different context, they may well be taken as being evidence of some kind of actual past life memory, and once that idea has been planted, then it can grow into kind of quite an elaborate false memory on the basis of the parents quite naturally trying to find out more details and maybe prompt the child, etc., etc.
A lot of times when children have a fantasy, the story changes. They embellish it, they change it, they mix it up. But the past life stories are very consistent, and they can remain consistent for several years. And Chase had never been exposed to anything about the Civil War because I was a stay-at-home mother. We had very strict television policy. I certainly wasn't into history or Civil War history at all. It wasn't only the details that Chase remembered, it was the way he described it from the first-person perspective with the appropriate emotions. You know, he wasn't offering a glorified version of war. He was very sad, confused, and feeling guilty about being there.
When we look at those cases, those spontaneous memories that children sometimes come up with in cultures where reincarnation isn't generally accepted, then I think that is quite a challenge to skeptics to try to explain what's going on there. I think Sherrie Leigh's case is interesting because obviously the person that she claims to be reincarnated is a very, very glamorous person. And I mean, you'll typically find that, not always by any means. Now that in itself, I think, is indicative that this is playing some kind of psychological role, it's got a psychological function.
The truth of the matter is that out of 5,000 cases I had over 30 years, they were just, even on the fingers of one hand, I cannot count them that they were celebrities. So the rest were John Doe and Jane Doe.
So, you know, if Sherrie Leigh's case was real, they can prove it and something came out, it would be completely groundbreaking. So I started to consider that after a while. What if this is real? And what if she is? This is huge. This is amazing. This could be something that really changed the entire way that Western culture approached the idea of reincarnation. To find scientific proof of reincarnation, I tracked down Paul Von Ward, a Harvard scholar doing groundbreaking research in the field. In his book, The Soul Genome, he presents a theory that soul prints of the people we were in past lives are evident in this one.
What we've discovered from the meta-analysis that we've done of a lot of very strong cases is that the physical features carry forward, the genotype features, also personality factors such as the way a person thinks, the person's emotional state, the interpersonal style, also one's areas of creative interest. We measure those things that we can document empirically. What we found in the first place was there were resemblances between people living today and photographs that we had from their alleged past lives, and they looked very close. They've plotted out the points of the bone structure that help shape the geometry of the face.
And that doesn't really change as you age?
Doesn't change as you age.
Yeah.
What we're looking at is ratios, not the actual dimensions. And we go in then and take this photograph of Marilyn. We're looking at 6 measurements. One of them is a measurement involving the length of the nose. And then we did the same thing for Sherrie. When I added them up, the averages for the differences between Marilyn and Sherrie, I got 1%. 1% is the difference that a security camera will let a person pass into a secure area because the difference is within their parameters. I mean, that's pretty astounding. And you could say, well, that's just an accident. But we know that it's not just an accident because we've tested at random photographs of just a variety of people. And by chance, you would be 5%, 10%, 15, 20% variance. To be at that level of 1% was phenomenal. So we know that we've got a genotype match there. So then we turn to the personality factors, and we discovered, you know, the personality type, the ego type, that is the emotional profile, the mental profile, that is the way they think. These two women think alike. So when you put that whole package together, it says that this is one of the strongest cases that we've come across. For any scientist to look at the data and then simply dismiss it saying, oh, that's just by chance, it would be absurd.
The multitude of patients that I helped over 30 years through past life regression therapy attest to the fact that you know, reincarnation is for real.
I was this close to dying by suicide. He freed me, and if I didn't learn from it, I feel like I wouldn't be here.
Every single person dies. We're all going to die. So what happens to us? It's a really important question. Everyone's going to be faced with it. So, you know, I think that sort of what's happening is the Eastern ideas are starting to be investigated by these Western scientists because they, for some reason, they're always just so close to the way things work. I believe that I'm the reincarnation of this person I'm meant to be. I don't know why, but I've come to an understanding in my life that if I am this person, there's this incredible connection. But if I'm not this person, there's also a pretty amazing connection between me and him because I've chosen to invest in this person's life. I've had to live with it, I've had to question it, and I've just come to be okay with it.
The continuation of life after death is a fascinating belief that has been around for thousands of years. Although reincarnation has now captured the imagination of many in the West, it is still greeted with skepticism as there is no concrete proof in any of the cases. Regardless, the subject and the very possibility continue to intrigue. Can human consciousness survive death and thrive in subsequent lives? We investigate, you decide. I'm Robert J. Sawyer. Thank you for joining us on Supernatural Investigator.